Okay, a wonderful good afternoon. As Stefan mentioned, I'm Peter Lutz, responsible for the new initiative, which is named Field Level Communications Initiative. Short term is FLC, so you will hear that throughout my presentation, explaining what this initiative is about, and certainly it has to do with TSN, where you got some information already what this means, but it is overall much more than just including TSN. And I try to explain this to you in the next 20 minutes. So first of all, the initiative itself was presented for the first time to the public last November 2018, at the big automation show in Germany, the SPS show. You see on the right-hand side some pictures taken in that press conference. So there was a huge interest, not only by press people, journalists, but also many company representatives. And the high interest was related actually to two major messages. The one message was that OPC Foundation has decided to bring OPC UA down to the field level. So that was one of the key messages. But the other message that is maybe has the same importance is that this initiative gets the support of all the major automation suppliers in the world. And some of them are named here on the slides. So by announcing this strategy to bring OPC UA down to the field level, in addition to the support by these automation suppliers, this is a real milestone in, let's say, automation and industrial communication. You see here the initial supporters of this initiative. So it's about 23 companies. That was at that time, SPS show last year. Automation suppliers, also suppliers of network infrastructure components, chip manufacturers. So it's, so to say, the who is who. I should mention it is an open initiative, so everyone can actually join. Even this is now has started for several months. I would also like to emphasize that these companies bring in financial contributions to make this initiative fly, and at the same time they contribute resources, so manpower, experts, in order to make all that technical work, the technical specifications for OPC UA technology. Now the vision for the Field Level Communications Initiative is actually the vision like the OPC Foundation has already today, but it certainly includes now all the aspects and all the requirements of industrial automation, including the field level. So this is the new part. But it's still about industrial interoperability. It's still about open standards. It's about scalability and allowing IIoT communication from cloud to sensor and vice versa. If you have a closer look at this slide, you recognize that even we talk about automation, we clearly stated that the initiative is not only about covering the requirements of factory automation, but explicitly includes the requirements we have to fulfill for process automation as well. So we try to come up with a solution that fits to the different needs of the different industries, and certainly everything built about or around the existing OPC UA ecosystem. Now, what are now the new use cases coming out of the FLC initiative? You see here on the right-hand side different scenarios where the first four, actually even five, partly is already covered by OPC UA as we have it today, which includes IT, OT connectivity, cloud integration, secure remote access, local OT communication, and you have heard different stories already over the day on these different use cases. Now, what is new with FLC? We focus also on controller-to-controller communication, including deterministic information exchange. And we also bring down OPC UA to the field level. So it's about also doing OPC UA between controllers and field devices. We work on a concept which allows us also to include easily future upcoming technologies. One which is already on the roadmap, and Stefan has showed you this in the morning already on the OPC Foundation's roadmap, is to include 5G also. So this is also on our roadmap for FLC. And certainly whatever comes up in future, the approach is done in a way that, like you have seen with the overall OPC UA architecture, that we can easily adapt to different needs by adding components, adding different mappings. So this is the future-proof approach of OPC technology. Now, what is the working approach, or what is, let's say, the formula to make FLC a success? You see there are three ingredients we put together. On the one hand side, which is shown on the left on top, is we rely on existing approved unmodified OPC UA, including all the features you have already heard about, like information, models, semantics, security, very important, and the connectivity that is already part of OPC UA. We combine this with standards out of IEC, IEEE with regard to Ethernet communication, and especially interesting is certainly the deterministic Ethernet TSN that you have heard about in the previous presentation. By combining this, we make OPC UA deterministic, and this is actually why we cover additional use cases like the ones you have seen before. But also there is another important input, and this is coming here from, let's say, the different member companies in OPC Foundation, because we strongly rely on the expertise of major automation suppliers that have 10, 20 years of experience with all the different field buses to bring in this know-how to extend OPC UA to cover the requirements of field-level communications. The clear goal is that we are not defining a combination of TSN substandards by ourselves. The message, I think, was clear in the previous presentation, because this is a lot of different substandards. We have really to make sure that the industry is using a common set, a common profile of these substandards. Otherwise, we have different network infrastructures that support different protocols, and we have not achieved a real advantage with regard to, let's say, existing solutions in the market. This means we clearly rely on that TSN industrial automation profile, which comes out of a joint initiative of IEC and IEEE. This is the 6802, because they work on that defined combination of substandards that allows finally not only to run OPC UA over the TSN, but also to have other protocols from other organizations sharing the same network infrastructure. And this is important because we certainly want to support the convergence of the different network protocols we have today. And by allowing to have conventional protocols coexisting with the new ecosystem we are building, the acceptance of end users will certainly be much higher, and we allow companies to smoothly migrate existing solutions to future OPC UA FLC solutions. Now this slide is talking a little bit about the the work items we have to execute inside our initiative. And first of all, I want to mention that this field level communications is certainly part of OPC Foundation, so it's not an organization in parallel, but it's fully integrated in OPC Foundation. And as I said, it relies on all the existing components we mentioned here, OPC UA, security, DI. It's also certainly including PubSub that you have heard about, which is designed also to support the requirements for field level by having efficient and very flexible communication relationships. We will actually, in a first step, define the so-called base device facet and procedures to do offline configuration. This is, let's say, a base device model that all field devices have to support, independent whether it's a field device or a controller device. And certainly we need to have the possibility to do an offline configuration like you are used to when doing field buses or real-time Ethernet today. We are then specifying a communication facet. This is actually an important component because with this communication facet, we are mapping the services on different underlying transport protocols. So certainly Ethernet is one important mapping. TSN is important because of the deterministic behavior. And 5G is, as I said already, also on the roadmap and will then also be part of that mapping to underlying networks. We also have work items above this base device facet, and this brings us to what we typically call in field buses device profiles or functional profiles. This is about defining the semantics for the different device types we find in the field, like a servo drive frequency converter, a modular I/O, an encoder, a measurement device, whatever is there. So we are using the modeling principles of OPC UA and define agreed semantics that allows you to easily integrate third-party devices into your system connected to your controller. And last but not least, we certainly deal with conformance testing, which is an extremely important aspect because we certainly have to make sure that these devices work together without any major engineering needed. So covering this typically called plug and play or plug and work, whatever you want to call it. From the organizational point of view, as I said, the FLC initiative is fully integrated into the existing structure of OPC Foundation. So there is a close alignment with the technical control board, marketing control board, and it's certainly reporting to the board of directors of OPC Foundation. The task of the steering committee, and this is actually where the 23 companies with their representatives are actually controlling or managing the technical working groups, and in addition they are managing the marketing team related to field level communications. Now what is so special about that steering committee? What is the task? And I want to talk a few minutes at least about what do these companies bring in and what is, let's say, their working charter. The working charter for them is to bring in and to clearly define the requirements for the technical solution, for the technical specifications. Because certainly if you just run a technical working group, there is a broad variety of what they can think of and what they can specify. But certainly whatever we do, we want to meet the marketing requirements. And this is done by representatives of these companies. You have here one slide explaining a little bit the procedure. So these companies are, let's say, breaking down the promises for FLC that are already public and that are part of the brochure, also what you find in the brochure you already received, break this down into user stories and derivative user stories, and then identifying the marketing requirements. And certainly these companies have additional boundary conditions on the roadmap. What is high priority? What is, let's say, lower priority? And they also have some rules for the design principles. So nothing should be really invented from scratch if there is already existing solutions in the market. So the approach is to do best of breed, look how others were already doing that, and then combine this that it fits to OPC way. And this is then the input for the technical teams. They work on meeting these requirements. So this is the workflow. From the roadmap, we are looking for two different, let's say, solutions. Short to midterm, we have the so-called minimum viable solution. This is already a solution that you can bring products and systems to the market. And whatever comes after certainly has to be backward compatible. And we have then mid to long term the so-called North Star final goal. This is a lot of requirements which is nice to have, but maybe not too urgent from the priority list. So TSN is certainly part of that MVS system, but 5G is then part of North Star, just to give you one example. But certainly we break this down into all the different requirements and assign them to the different project phases. Now, what is so special about FLC? You might want to ask. We have today solutions for field level communications. What is so special? And I think with this abstract interactions model, I can hopefully quite well explain to you what is unique and what gives FLC really unique value propositions. And this is not only that we cover with OPC UA controller-to-controller communication, controller-to-device communication, and also certainly device-to-device. The really interesting part is that we allow direct connectivity from the controller up to IT, up to the cloud, and the same also for the field devices themselves. So that means you have the possibility to directly take data, take information out of the field, and bring this up to the IT systems where you can do an analysis, where you can optimize your production, whatever. All the different use cases we have out of Industry 4.0 and the IIoT. And all these interactions you see here, they are all consistently done with OPC UA. And this is, I think, really the unique selling point. You have not different technologies where you need gateways and where you have to convert protocols or the semantics also. You have this all consistent using the information modeling principles of OPC UA. Now a few words about the technical group. This is actually a very large group in the meantime. So today we have more than 160 members out of 43 companies. Already at the kickoff, we had 90 participants from 38 companies. So you see there is a lot of interest, a lot of resources spent. And you can also see the two, let's say, chairman and editor, Clark Case, Georg Bieler, they are actually driving this technical part coming from Rockwell Automation and Siemens. And certainly we have, let's say, a little politics because of all these stakeholders working together. But as we are doing the technical work here, mainly politics are out of scope and they really concentrate on the technical solution, which makes us confident that this approach is flying and is becoming successful. You see here for FLC different working groups. Actually, we have started with 4 groups: architecture, connecting devices, information model for the base device facet, and offline engineering. And we then will start very soon with additional groups working on motion, I/O, conformance testing. And we have a close link to existing working groups of the OPC Foundation. So the PubSub prototyping, the PubSub TSN group, and all the safety group where you already have heard in a presentation some results, which is under the roof of FLC, but it's an existing working group out of OPC Foundation. And certainly the Technical Advisory Council is the one that is then finally approving the specs, because we want to make sure this is all consistent to existing OPC UA specifications. Now maybe a few words about the importance of that communication facet. As I said, here we are doing the mapping to underlying networks based on PubSub, and then mapping this to UDP, mapping it to TSN, and also in future mapping it to 5G. So what we are doing is we take the existing framework of OPC UA that you have already heard about in the morning, in the more technical presentation, and we adapt this to underlying networks, including Ethernet, including TSN. So what we are actually doing is we are modeling the so-called quality of service, and this is modeled in a generic way, not already relating to a specific underlying network architecture. And then after having the quality of service with giving application requirements like cycle time, latency, jitter, whatever has to do with quality of service, this is then mapped to TSN, to Ethernet, 5G, or whatever comes up. And this approach is then, as I said before, future-proof, and nothing we only do for Ethernet or for TSN. Okay, I'm not sure how I'm with regard to the time, but I assume the 20 minutes should be already over, so I have a few slides left. This slide is the one taken from the press event last year. So you not only have the company logos, but also the faces of the representatives, which gave their commitment to support the FLC initiative. We will have 2 additional members soon in this initiative, and as I said, whoever wants to join this steering committee controlling this activity is always welcome. And I should emphasize, technical working groups are open to any OPC Foundation member, so there is no limit to being a sponsor of that initiative or not. Everyone can follow, everyone can dial into the web meetings and can look at the results being elaborated by these teams. Final information, there is a FLC brochure available for download. There is also 2 pages inside the brochure you have about FLC if you want to read through or subscribe to the newsletter. And any direct questions you want to know, you're interested in, please directly ask me either today or phoning me or sending me an email. So I hope you got a good understanding what FLC is about. Thank you very much for your attention, and if there are questions, feel free to ask.